Mentioned that we had a first in that report. It's the first time that Michel Gros has used his English in a television interview. Let's move on to racing. Motorcycle racing has a huge following here in Europe, and it takes on forms that test the rider's abilities and daring under all kinds of conditions. One of the best examples, of course, is motocross, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But the Europeans' love of two-wheel sports includes those without an engine. And what these drivers attempt with a lot of horsepower, other athletes are willing to try with plain old manpower. Werner Wendler and Mark Rossmann take us to the Cyclocross World Championship in Munich.
Klaus-Peter Thaler stood on the victory rostrum overwhelmed with joy. The tears in his eyes said it all. It was an unexpected victory for the 35-year-old West German.
When I began training here at the beginning of the week and got a good look at the course, I knew that the conditions weren't going to change. I figured I'd finish among the top 10, maybe even the top 5. That would have been a very good showing for me. But to win the gold medal surprised me as much as everyone else.
Klaus-Peter Thaler did become the professional world champion in this sport. The sport is cyclocross, cross-country cycling over ice, mud, slush, and snow. Smoothly paved paths are virtually non-existent. It's a sport where running with the bike is just as important as the ability to ride it, especially on the steep uphill grades. The 12-speed bikes are all specially made for the sport, each weighing roughly 14 pounds. To simplify shifting, the gear shift lever has been integrated into the handlebars.
Munich, of course, was the site of the 1972 Summer Olympics, and when the games ended here, the facilities continued to be used for a variety of sporting events. But this is the first time that the grounds of the Olympic Park have been transformed into a World Championship cross-country course.
David Garfield was the only American entered.
What's the most attractive thing about this sport? What makes somebody like you want to compete in a sport like this to begin with?
Well, I used to race early in the 70s and was in the Olympic trials in 76, and then I quit and I started to run, and I like the combination cycling and running. I like going both.
Do you think the sport has a future in the States?
I would like to think so. I think it's attractive for the spectators especially, but it's hard to say. As mountain bikes grow, I think cyclocross will also grow in the United States.
Aside from Garfield, 27 pro cyclists from 8 nations were at the start, among them West German Klaus-Peter Thaler, who was given only an outside chance at the title. Then the go-ahead was given for the start of this World Championship race, one that would last 1 hour plus 1 lap. This is a new rule in international competitions. Until a year ago, the cyclists were required to complete a designated distance. At the outset, a small group of cyclists quickly slipped away from the rest of the pack. Among the leaders were the overwhelming favorite Roland Libonton, the reigning world champ from Belgium, Klaus-Peter Thaler, number 44, Luxembourger Claude Micheli, number 36, and Dutchman Henny Stammschneider, number 24. The rest of the field would have a tough time trying to catch the leaders. The various man-made obstacles along the 2-mile-long course began to take their toll. But on the longer stretches, where ice, mud, and snow made it particularly difficult for the cyclists, West German Klaus-Peter Thaler did surprisingly well. The trickiest part of the course was the incredibly steep up and downhill grades, some with inclines of up to 36%. But here, too, the group of leaders managed to hold on to their positions. The muddier sections were a bit problematic for some of the cyclists, but a good vantage point for those spectators who came to see a few spills. American David Garfield was also having a few problems tackling the difficult course. Even the Belgian Libonton, the overwhelming favorite, was forced to drop back after his chain broke. In the lead, Klaus-Peter Thaler was still pedaling strong. Thaler took an 18-month hiatus from racing to train West Germany's amateur cyclocross racers. This was his official comeback debut. Close behind was Luxembourger Claude Micheli, who has not been that successful internationally. Dutchman Adré van der Poel was another cyclist originally not given much of a chance, but after a slow start, he managed to join the leaders. But going into the final lap, the 35-year-old Thaler really gave his all, crossing the finish line first a good 2 seconds ahead of Adrie van der Poel, who relegated Claude Micheli of Luxembourg to third. Mark Rossman in Munich for Sports Report.